Welcome back to the experiment. Welcome to the live stream. This is week 4 of Write Your Book along with us. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then please get along to authors.fm/live stream, and you need to catch up, especially because this is a most important week. It's where we actually get to start writing. So I want you to go to authors.fm/live stream. I'll take you there right now. And what I'll show you is what you've missed. If you are working along with us, then you know exactly where we are. We're in week 4, which is content creation. But let me show you what we've already captured for you on the previous 3 weeks of live streams. So if you go to authors.fm/live stream, you can see recordings of the previous 3 live streams. And there's something else for you here as well. So here's what you'll see when you get into the page. Come on, scroll down with me. Write your book along with us. Welcome to the live stream directory. So I've also put a link to a contents page, to a contact page here. So if you have any questions about any of this material, it'll be great for us to hear the questions you have. We can fill in any gaps that we've left. That'd be great. Please send us your questions. So also here you will find recordings of the 3 previous live streams. Now the first one was particularly long live stream, so I've broken it into 3 chunks. Firstly, why write a book? The second video is your 12-step plan, what we're doing over this 12 weeks of this project. That's in the second video. And then developing your core book concept. Now, week 2 was pretty coherent week, so it's all in one. So how do you plan the content creation for your book? That's there on this page. Last week's live stream was all about creating your book content. We talked about the first research interviews that you need to do. All of that information is here on week 3.1. Now, what I've done since the last live stream is I've recorded 3 extra videos for you. It's about time we started realizing we have to make this book real. We have to make your book real. So there are some choices you have to make. If you're ready to print your book, if you want to go ebook, those sorts of questions. But for all of those, you still need an ISBN, an International Standard Book Number. So that is what we'll do in this first video. I'll show you that here. The next thing you need to do is register your book with, oh look, I've got the same, no I haven't, ha ha ha. The 3.3 video is how do you get your book onto the Nielsen directory. Nielsen is the agency in the UK which distributes your book to the British Library and to other libraries and directories worldwide. If you're in the United States, then it's Bowker. You need to get your book on Bowker. I'll talk more about that on the video. So if you want to catch up on everything that we've done so far, if there's elements that you've missed, if you missed an entire week, then you need to get yourself to authors.fm/live stream and you'll see all of these videos. And what I talk about in making your book real is you're really announcing to the world that your book is coming. So in week 3.4 and video 3.4, we talk about how to get your book on Amazon. And if you go and look on Amazon right now, you will see that You Should Write a Book is there. In fact, why don't we do it? Let's go to Amazon right now. Amazon. I'm going to go to the .co.uk website. Here it is, amazon.co.uk. Sonsino, You Should Write a Book. Here it is. This is what I put on Amazon last week. So this is the all the technical material, the size of the book, the pagination. We've also put here all the information that's sort of pretty much from the book blurb. You might recognize some of this stuff. How do you attract, inspire, showcase your expertise, profit, and so on. So all of that is now online on the Amazon page. You don't have to pre-order this item. You'll notice also that it says the title is going to be released on September 30. I've explained why in the video, why I've put that 6 months in the future, just in case we need to slow down production for whatever reason if something happens. That date will come further forward, so don't worry too much about that. So quick recap. I urge you, get along to authors.fm/livestream and make sure that you catch up. Unless you're as disciplined as we are, it's possible that you've fallen behind. And I really want you to stay along with us so that you can write your book along with us. The way you can do that is catch up with some of these videos. I'm going to add some documentation to these pages. So if you click on this button here or click on the video panel itself, it takes you through to a page where the live stream itself is stored. And what I'll do is I'll list here all the documentation associated with each episode. So we're into week 4. Week 4 is really exciting because this is the week when you get to start writing your stuff. But before you do, you need to carry on with your plan. If you remember, we've identified 20 people that we want to interview, and you need to carry on with identifying 4 or 5 of those that you want to talk to this week. All the information about how you record those interviews is in last week's live stream. Case studies, have you researched your final case study? So if you remember, we're talking about great examples of how you do your thing. Have you got a great example? Somebody that you've helped, how did you help them? You need to tell that story and include that in the book. You'll need 5 of these in total to spread at appropriate times during the book. So make sure that this week you spend some time catching up with more of your research interviews. But this week is exciting because now we're going to start writing. Now, people talk about, I want to write my book. We're in week 4 and we haven't started writing yet because there's a lot of planning and preparation to streamline this process. So this is where that planning really, really pays off. So I want you to look back at your table of contents, the table of contents that you created 2-3 weeks ago. You can pick any one of those chapters to start writing if you feel inspired to start with chapter 6 or chapter 8 from your table of contents. What I found is, for me, I like to start at the beginning and write through. So start off with the preface, the introduction, go to chapter 1, chapter 2, so that the argument in my head builds over the few weeks that this will take to write. So I'm going to start with the preface and chapter 1. But before I even do that, I want you to open up a blank document in Word or whatever word processing package you use and put at the top Style Guide. What invariably happens as you start writing is that you use different spellings for different things. Maybe sometimes you'll use a spelling of organize, O-R-G-A-N-I-S-E. And then a few minutes later, another chapter, you might write organize, O-R-G-A-N-I-Z or Z-E. So you need to make decisions as you reach those tricky words, maybe also spellings of people's names if they're difficult or tricky. Capture all of those odd spellings, those things that are the style of your book, the editorial style of your book. Because when you hand this document, this chapter, this manuscript on to somebody to edit or to proofread, and you have different spellings throughout, they need some guide as to which one you prefer. So create your style guide as you go. It's basically a list of odd spellings, your personal preference for grammatical issues. Will you ever split an infinitive to boldly go or to go boldly in Star Trek mythology, the worst split infinitive of all time? So all of those things about writing, when something occurs to you as you write it, open up your style guide, add it into the style guide so that you can hand over a fully fledged document to your editor, to your proofreader later, and they can make sure that your text, your interviews, your chapters, your book is coherent all the way through. It seems madness to open up a blank document and just leave it blank, but you want it there so that when these items crop up, you can immediately capture it. So, trust me, create a style guide and add to it as you go through. I'm going to start with the author's preface. What's the sort of introduction and the reasons for writing the book? And I'm going to suggest that you base your author's preface pretty much on the blurb that you also wrote a few weeks ago. So the blurb says, why you should write a book. It says you should write a book because you want to inspire others, change others, but no one's paying attention to your business. So your author's preface needs to match what you said on the back of the book. If you think about the order in which somebody in a bricks and mortar world, when they'd pick up your book, they'd see the title, they'd look at the back cover, they buy it, they open it up, it needs to match. So the author's preface follows, or should follow, broadly speaking, the structure of the blurb that you wrote a few weeks ago. That blurb, if you remember, well, you won't remember unless you've seen the Amazon video. That blurb is also the description on Amazon. So if you ordered it electronically, you'll read this blurb, you get the book through the post later that evening or the following day. You want the opening moments of the book to pay off why you purchased it. So your author's preface needs to match the blurb. You've already written it. So it should be fairly easy to craft your author's preface. Explain a little bit how you think the book will be. It's an inspiring step-by-step practical guide. So the author's preface should very closely match what's in the blurb. Also in the author's preface, you will probably put your thank yous, your acknowledgements of help as you go forward. At this stage, you probably don't have anybody in that category, but put a little paragraph just to remind you, acknowledgements, thank yous. Put that in there as a placeholder, so when you get to it later, you can add their names in. So the author's preface shouldn't take you very long at all. It should take you 20 minutes, half an hour to write your author's preface. Why write the preface first? For me, it just re-embeds the concepts in the blurb, the title, the blurb, the table of contents. You want these embedded in your head. So as you write the book, as you continue to write the chapters over the coming 3 to 4 weeks, all of this, what this is for, who this is about, it's embedded in your head. So that when you come to write, you write quickly, you're focused on what the book is trying to do, and you don't get distracted with random other ideas. For me, writing it sequentially speeds up the writing process, and it keeps me focused on the task in hand, delivering a book that meets the reader's needs. So now I'm into chapter 1. So before we put pen to paper, before we put finger to keyboard, I want to talk about chapter structure. So let's look at the big book. The big book is 70 to 80,000 words long. So if we said there's going to be 10 chapters, 3 groups of 3 chapters, an intro and a concluding chapter. So there's roughly 10, 11 chapters, maybe 12 at a push. Let's say there are 10 chapters in your 80,000 word book. So that's 8,000 words a chapter. That might sound an incredible amount. But if you remember when we were talking about interviews, you will speak in the course of 1 hour about 8,000 words. If you transcribe a 1 hour long interview, that will create for you 8,000 words. So I want you to think of a chapter as a 1 hour talk, a 1 hour discussion. So if you were to get up on stage and talk about something for an hour, you'd think about, well, what are the first couple of things that I want to include at the beginning? What are the last couple of things I want to say? What's the conclusion that I want to reach in this hour? And then in the middle, you'd put some building blocks that show your evidence for how you've researched this topic, and some conclusions and options about the way forward. So let's look at this 8,000 word. Let's look at this single chapter and see if we can't deconstruct it and create a template for all of your chapters. So a single chapter should have a barnstorming introduction, something really striking, a bold fact, an outrageous quote from somebody, something that grabs people's attention because they've just turned to the book, they've opened up the page to this chapter, they want to be grabbed. They need to have their attention grabbed. So your intro, your first paragraph has to really grab their attention. So think about, how are you going to grab their attention? Barnstorming introduction. Then you want to think about maybe 4 or 5 points, 4 or 5 elements in this chapter that will take you from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And if you think about the structure of the book as a whole, it's what's up, what's the situation. So describe the context, the current situation, that people might be experiencing. Then move into thinking for 1,000 or 2,000 words in the middle. What could they do? What are the options open to them? What possibilities lie before them? And then in the final part of the chapter, what could they do now? What should they do now? So the broad structure for any chapter is exactly what we talked about as a broad structure for the book. Current context, here's the situation, this is what you might be grappling with. Here are the things you could be doing in the middle, 2 or 3 things you could be doing. And here are the 1 or 2 things you should do next. And then you end with a cliffhanger. And so it's something like, you might have thought that was complicated, but you wait till you look at the next chapter. Or so. I mean, that's a trivial cliffhanger, but that is how we're going to get your reader to want to turn the page and get into the next chapter. So you might want to revise your table of contents. What I found is sometimes in writing a chapter, you realize that, it's chapter 3 that should come next as chapter 2 and not chapter 2. So the writing and the structuring kind of go hand in hand. But if you take it a step at a time, it's going to be absolutely a dream, a streamlined dream to get this done. So let's recap. For me, it's the first chapter, but this chapter is going to have a barnstorming introduction. It's going to raise a number of issues that men and women are grappling with in the writing of their book. It's going to raise a couple of options, things they could do. Maybe they print it, maybe they go to a mainstream publisher, maybe they go to a self-publishing process. And then it's going to reach some kind of conclusion that they want to choose this particular route or that particular route. And then I need to create a cliffhanger to move on to the next piece. So before you start writing fully, you need to create for yourself a template, barnstorming introduction, 5 or 6 stepping stones that will get you from that barnstorming introduction to a conclusion. And at the conclusion, you have a cliffhanger that takes them into the next chapter. So outline your author's preface based on the blurb, outline a rough chapter structure. It can vary. Don't be trapped by this. This is just to get you moving. Outline a single chapter outline template. Write down 6 or 8 bullet points in a Word document that you can open up and start writing straight away. And now we need to write the first 2 chapters. So here's my first tip. Yeah, open up your template structure. I tend to do a brain dump. Here's all the things that I want to include in this. So I would just sit and write this chapter or that this paragraph or this block or this element that I want to include. I tend to work from my outline. So if I create an outline for this chapter, it's this is going to be the first section, this is going to be the second section, this is going to be the third. Now, where's that interview? I need to include that piece of the interview here. It's a great moment to use those Dropbox folders again. So maybe you've created a Dropbox folder called Chapter 1, and you've included some PDFs that you've downloaded from the web. You definitely have your transcript there for the research interview that you've just done, and you've got your thoughts that you brainstormed one idle Tuesday afternoon. I want to say something about the interviews that you've done. If you have the choice, you should prefer to include new research material that you've created, new interview material that you've created for this book, rather than something that was written some time ago, no matter how authoritative that material is. Simply because it's your unique research material. You should prefer your primary research over anything else for this book. It will be rigorous. It will be solid research, new ideas, and that will make your book even more attractive as it comes to fruition. You can say it includes current interviews with the world's leading X, Y, and Z. Your primary research, the interviews that you've been doing and that you will continue to do for a few weeks yet, will be one of the most useful things that you can provide your readers. A current, cutting, state-of-the-art, cutting-edge report, survey, summary of the latest things to do with cooking, business, personal development, whatever it might be. So prefer your primary interviews and research over any other material. That's just really, really important. So 2 chapters. I'm going to suggest you have this week, over the course of the next week, that you get your preface down, your author's preface or introduction. Write that. It should be based on the blurb. It doesn't have to be as long as a chapter. It could just be 1,000 words. It could be 1,500 words. It will be as long as the blurb, plus acknowledgements, plus a few extra bits and pieces. And we'll talk about that later. Chapter 1, setting out your thoughts based on the table of contents. Let's just very quickly open up our table of contents that we had before. So here we have is this a table of contents? Yes, it is. So this is table of contents. It's still version 1. So there's the introduction. The introduction preface is our overview of the reasons why. And then we were going to use those 7 or 8 points to write a chapter about each of these things that a book can do for you. That means they're going to be small chapters. So I know I said we would look at 3 or 4 chapters in this piece. So it looks to me as if we'll be writing a couple of these in each chapter. So your book needs to inspire people, but it also needs to attract people. So that's just one way I will be looking at this table of contents. I need to include 2 reasons for writing a book in each of these first chapters. So how, in the language that you use, how in the examples that I should be including here, how can I demonstrate that your book will inspire your community to take some form of action? How can I use the same material or different material to show that your book can also attract new clients to work with you? So I have to pick those 2 things quite carefully so that they fit together quite well. How do you, with your book, inspire people but also attract new clients? I may choose to showcase your expertise at the same way as platform. That fits together quite well. How do you generate profit at the same time as demonstrating authority? Maybe you could link those quite well. If you've got authority and credibility, then people are more likely to want to invest in your services. So I've got some work to do here to make my table of contents fit the writing structure in this first third. What's the relevance of this discussion for you? Look at your table of contents. Try to make it work as best you can, but don't be afraid to change it, to tweak it. The table of contents, the draft table of contents, is your start point. But as you come to write your chapters, you may think this is not in the right place. That's perfectly fine. The table of contents is just a way to get you started and to keep you on track during the research and the writing phase. Don't jettison the whole thing altogether. It's very likely that work that you put in, the thinking that you put in to create the table of contents is worth holding on to. So don't jettison it, but don't be afraid to tweak it as you go forward. So that's what I'm proposing to do this week. I've got to finish my author's preface, the initial outline. I'm going to write 2 additional chapters for the book. And what I suggest to you is, as you start writing, as you start following that chapter template that we talked about, is that you write forwards. Don't stop and go back and say, oh, that's not quite how I meant to express it, or that's not the right word. Write forwards, get it down. However you write, whether you assemble from blocks or whether you start at the beginning and write all the way through, write forwards, never go back. At this stage, you want to get it out. You want to create the material. It's much easier, in my view, to edit a 10 or 12,000 word chapter or article down to an 8 or 9,000 word article than it is to, I've got 1,000 perfect words. Now I need to write another 9,000 perfect words. It's much easier to get the material down on paper, on screen, and then massage that into a much more effective, tighter piece of work. But don't overwrite. Don't write a 40,000 word chapter. You should be able to use the table of contents to guide your thinking. Write about 8 or 9,000 words and then reflect, then edit, then revise a little bit later on. And if you find you're down to 7,000 words, 7,500 words, you only need to write an extra few hundred words to make it fit. So, write forwards, write to fit. Never overwrite. If you're spending time, it should include this, it should include that, it should include the other, and then I'll edit it down. You're wasting a heck of a lot of time. And you don't have that luxury. So write forwards, write to fill. Don't overwrite. Absolute killer mistake. So carry on with the research interviews this week. Quick recap. Carry on with the research interviews this week. Carry on with the case studies. You need 5 in total over these early research weeks. Start writing. Open up a blank document. Get a style guide. Create a style guide. Author's preface should be based on the blurb. It's almost done. It's almost done. Now, write chapters 1 and chapter 2 this week. That is your task this week. You might also this week want to start thinking about downstream. You're going to launch this book to the world. So maybe some initial ideas. You've been thinking quietly over the last few weeks. You'd like to have some kind of launch webinar. Maybe you'd like to have a launch conference. Jot these early ideas down. So open up another document, call it Launch Plan, and just brainstorm and throw these ideas in there. Leave it there in your Dropbox folder and add to it over the weeks ahead, so that when we come to actually look at it, you'll have 3 or 4 things, 5 or 6 things that you can draw on to refine and choose the single most important aspects of that. Whether you're involved in social media or other things. Put those ideas into your draft launch plan. So this week you also look back at the things that maybe you didn't complete last week. So if you didn't get your ISBN number, if you didn't put your book on Amazon, go back, review the videos on authors.fm/livestream. Make sure that you know how to do that and get that done. The timesheet. I was going to show you the timesheet. I hope that was interesting last week when we created that. So let's have a look at the timesheet. So if you remember, we had spent a couple of hours on the core concept. About 8 hours we went to the London Book Fair. 5 to 6 hours creating content and planning content last week. This week we've spent about 6 to 7 hours. We spent about 90 minutes creating the ISBN number, registering on Nielsen or Bowker if you're in the United States, and then getting the book page on Amazon. Those 3 took us about an hour and a half, 90 minutes in total. And you can see the videos. I did it online. I recorded exactly what I did, every step. This week, we've got 2 to 3 hours of interviews still to complete. And we're also going to write chapters 2 and 3 in draft form. So that's another 2 to 3 hours. So this week in total, we've spent between 6 and 7 hours working on this book. So our overall time to date over the last 4 weeks is just 24 solid hours at the desk, at the laptop, writing this book. Of course, as I've said before, a lot of time is spent thinking and discussing it with Jackie, but in actual fact, the detail of sitting and writing only over the last 4 weeks, 24 hours, which is roughly 6 hours a week. Hasn't exactly been that, but it's roughly 6 hours a week or about an hour a day. So I want to nail this myth once and for all that writing a book takes an inordinate amount of time. If you plan it thoroughly, as we've done, if you follow the plan, then it doesn't have to take long at all. It can be very focused, very, very streamlined. Now, one of the really exciting things I want to tell you about in the weeks ahead is, well, you know I've been working from my notes. We have a detailed checklist here of everything that you need to do each week. And that will keep you focused. It will keep you moving. Because although there are a lot of things to do, there are a lot of moving parts, if you know what to do, you can focus on each one. Each one will take you half an hour, 45 minutes or so. You need a checklist. One of the things that I've been doing is working with an organization to turn this checklist into a software app that you can access wherever you are. And I just want to very quickly show you this work in progress. Where is it? Here it is. So broadly speaking, this is our grid. It's a method grid from a company called Method Grid. And I hope to be able to share this with you very, very soon. But as you can see here, we have different stages. Let's very quickly look at this first stage, which was developing the core concept. Have you defined who the target audience is for the book? Here are the objectives for the module. Who's the target audience? A little bit of an article, an exercise. So this is a really, really useful software tool that I want to share with you very, very soon. It's not finished yet, and we haven't finished the arrangements so that we can make it public to you, but it's coming very, very soon. And I think this will, over the course of the next few weeks, be really helpful to you. It'll show you what to do at each different stage. Here's the primary research phase, then we move into elements of design, then there's a little bit of writing to do, then the editing starts. So editing doesn't happen right now, it happens a little bit later on. So it will also keep this process manageable for you so that you can continue the day job, and continue the other things that you're doing. So that's what I mean when I say there are a lot of moving parts, but if you have a plan and you can follow it, it will make it streamlined, quick and focused for you. So I'm very much looking forward to sharing that with you very, very soon. Have I done everything now? Just a final quick reminder. I want you to benefit from these live streams. So please, please catch up with us and don't bail out of this process. So go to authors.fm/live stream. Make sure that you catch up with all of the videos that are there. Why write a book, your 12-step plan, developing the book concept, planning the book content and creating content, how you do that. I've also included 3 that you probably haven't seen on how to get an ISBN, getting on Nielsen, getting into all the world's libraries and directories, and finally how to get your book on Amazon. So all the material of the previous 3 weeks, it's all there on the web for free for you to review. I want you to catch up if you are behind. If you're on target, please let me know. It'd be fantastic to hear from you. If you have any questions at all about the process, that is also here. Click Ask Us Anything and I will answer your questions as we go through over the next few weeks. I'm having a blast with this. Having you there to hold me accountable is really, really helpful because it's making sure that I have something to show you each week. So I urge you, find someone who can hold you accountable, that can keep you on track in the weeks ahead. We will have a book called You Should Write a Book available in just a few weeks, from a standing start to available on Amazon for you to read. I'll also make sure that you have access to the PDFs for this as soon as they're ready. So if you want to make sure that you are registered on authors.fm/live stream, if you've been showing an interest in this process, I'll make sure that you get a copy of the book, the electronic book, before we go live on Amazon. I think that is everything. Let me just recap. Let me look at week 4. More research conversations, finish the case studies. Start writing, create the style guide, outline the author's preface, should be based on the blurb. Chapters 1 and 2, make sure you use or create a single chapter outline template, and open up a draft launch plan document and start brainstorming your ideas to go in there. What we're going to do next week in week 5 is we're going to finish off some more research interviews. Might start thinking about who you'd like to have as your guest forward. What celebrity, what high-ranking individual in your business, celebrity in your sector, could you invite to do a guest forward? We'll talk about that next week. We'll begin to finalize a style guide. By next week, you'll have written 4 chapters, so you should be able to sort of nail down the style guide and say, this is how we spell, these are the grammatical structures that I like. We're going to begin talking about design next week. We'll also begin to work on the website. So color will start playing a big part in what we're doing next week. I might even wear a different colored t-shirt. Hope you like my NASA t-shirt this week. So that's it. Week 5, more writing, more design, and thinking about the website. That's it. I've had a blast today. I'm trying to speed up a little bit. I don't want you to feel that these are going to take an hour every week. So I hope I've got through this in a relatively quick period today. Look forward to hearing from you soon. Got to say once more, authors.fm/live stream. Register now, take a look at last week's videos, the last few weeks' videos, and catch up. It would be amazing to be able to launch your book in the same month, in the same period as we're launching ours. We'll give you a little bit of publicity for doing that as well. So that could also help us both. If you get your book done at about the same time as we get ours done, we can launch together and maybe piggyback and support each other as we do that. That's it. I'm going to say that's it for now. I'll speak to you again next week. Take care.